Hello, this is the Catholic Lady, and we are reading The Great Lion of God by Taylor Caldwell. The book was written in 1970, and it's about the possible life of St. Paul prior to his becoming an apostle and into the earliest part of his days. A great deal of it is fiction and presumptuary, but it is fully outlined with scripture and information that Paul provided to us in the many books that he wrote in the New Testament. And so Ms. Caldwell did a great deal of research in writing this book and reading the early church fathers as well, and many of the books that were left out of the Bible at that time. And she did a marvelous job, and it's one of my favorites from when I was a teenager. It took me years to find this again, so I hope you'll be able to find a copy for yourself. If you go looking, you might be able to find one in Amazon's reseller section. So good luck to you, and I hope you'll continue to listen, especially if you can't find one, okay? So thank you so much for joining me in this little journey, and I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you. We are at chapter 11. We'll begin. Aulus Platonius sent a messenger to Joseph of Arimathea to ask for an audience for Hillel ben Baruch, and in that message he conveyed the information given to him by his son, Titus Milo. In the meantime, Hillel set forth for his father-in-law's house to seek help, which he more than feared would not be forthcoming. The air had turned nimble again, and became, as sunset approached, wine gold and scarlet. An amber light lay on the crowded and mounting levels of Jerusalem, and gilded the tops of pine, palm, and cypress. And a trumpet sounded from the heights of the temple, warning the people that sunset and prayer were almost at hand. The sound, to Hillel in his despair, was both triumphant and lost. The gilded litter of Shabua ben Abraham, carried by 6 Nubian slaves, magnificently garbed, climbed and descended through the teeming streets and past high walls. Hillel had drawn the curtains of the litter so that he could survey the throngs of people and pray for them in silence. On entering the atrium of Shabua's house, Hillel encountered his son, Saul, who was wrapped closely in his dingy cloak as if cold. Hillel put his hand on Saul's arm and looked into his face and saw the pale, bemused expression. He said to him, "My son, it is my desire that you accompany me into the presence of your grandfather, for I have direful news to relate, and I need the comfort of you at my hand." Have to pardon me, my throat is got a frog in it. Saul said, as if he had not heard, "I fear I am becoming mad. One night in this house, while in my cubiculum, I heard a man's great voice call me, and today in the marketplace I heard the same commanding voice." Hillel considered him acutely. "And it frightened you?" Saul hesitated. He drew his cloak closer about him. "I do not know," he pondered. "I am filled with both fear and exaltation, but it was only a delusion." Saul shook his head. "Who can say?" he murmured. Then he took a firmer hold on his son's arm. "Come with me." The overseer of the hall entered the atrium, and Hillel requested him to ask Shabua to see his son-in-law and grandson. While they waited, the atrium became darker, and they stood in silence. The overseer returned to inform them that his lord Shabua ben Abraham had just emerged from the baths and was now in his chamber, preparing to dine with the noble procurator Pontius Pilate and King Herod Antipas. He would grant Hillel but a few moments. Hillel's pale mouth trembled with renewed wrath. He kept his hold on Saul and followed the overseer to Shabua's chambers, which were luxurious and warmly scented. Shabua was seated in an ebony chair near a small lemon-wood table, and his concubine, Asa, the beautiful and serpentine Nubian girl, was polishing his finger and toenails and perfuming his hands. He wore his usual air of negligent elegance and lay back in his chair as if exhausted. He was arrayed in a tunic of fine silvery cloth, and his toga lay on a chair, shimmering as if dipped in moonlight, and his sandals, inlaid with gems, awaited him. His ambiguous glance warned Hillel that he was still unpardoned for his past words and discreetly disliked. "Ah, Hillel, and my grandson Saul," he said in a mellifluous word, in a mellifluous voice. "I regret that I must leave you soon, and can give you but a little time." His pale eyes surveyed them with glacial indifference. His light hair was polished with unguents. Hillel's nose distended with dim disgust. Shabua did not urge him and Saul to seat themselves, and so they stood, though Saul first went to his grandfather and gave him a dutiful kiss on the cheek, at which Shabua smiled graciously. As twilight was now rapidly approaching, Asa drew the silken draperies across the window and lighted 2 tinted lamps, whose bases were of rosy alabaster. Hillel hid his mortification at being forced to stand like a servant before his lord. Hillel began to speak, and as he did so, he watched both Shabua and Saul. He spoke concisely, trying to conceal his agony, and as he spoke, Shabua's face subtly changed, became rigid and distant and haughty. But Saul showed his overwhelming distress and anguish. Finally Hillel had done, but he and Saul gazed intently at Shabua. Shabua held out his slender arms to Asa, and she reverently clasped the gemmed armlets on them and put rings upon his fingers. Then she stood beside the chair which held the toga, the ivory instrument of arrangement, in her black hand. Her eyes were limpid and without interest. She might have been a statue obediently waiting. Shabua examined one of his rings. "A dolorous affair," he said. He shook his head. "Why will they not learn? Or do they delight in violence and disturbance?" He turned his head and regarded Hillel with calm and amused malignance. "I assume that you have come to me with this sorry tale to ask my intervention with Pilate and Herod." "True," said Hillel. He added, "in behalf of your people." Shabua said, "All people are my people, Hillel ben Baruch. I am not a provincial. As I have observed to you before, I am one with all men, and there is no division. If criminals resort to illegal violence and murder, then I am against them, for I believe in law and order and rightful obedience and resignation to what is. Resignation to intolerable oppression and exploitation and taxation and cruel tyranny." "Ah, you use those words of violence yourself, Hillel, and I deplore this. I thought you a more temperate man. What is it you wish me to do? Debase myself before Pilate and Herod like a mean little rabbi from the provinces, whimpering for mercy? These men are my friends. They know my temper. They understand that I regret and denounce useless rebellion as much as they do. They know I am a civilized man. They know these wretches are nothing to me, though they call themselves Jews." Hillel thought he would die on the spot with his suffering and his anger and hatred. He put his trembling hand to his throat. "Shabua ben Abraham," he said, "deceive yourself though you will. These are your people and your kinsmen. You have none else. Would a Roman be indifferent to the torments of Romans, or even a Greek? No. Aulus Platonius has told me that he would die for Rome and his people, however useless the struggle. He is a man of honor and pride and loves his country." "And I do not," said Shabua ben Abraham. "I am not a man of Am I not a man of honor and pride? That is your opinion? Our values, our premises differ, Hillel ben Baruch. We have argued this before, and have come to no conclusion, no agreement. I tell you, these criminals are nothing to me. They endanger their whole people, but all of Israel in jeopardy. Put all of Israel in jeopardy. Threaten Israel with the Roman short sword and total annihilation. Is it not better that a few die for their country than all Israel be destroyed? A Jew who loves his country will ponder on that. Hillel was stricken. Then he said, Do you think Pilate will honor you as a civilized man, that you do not ask for mercy for your people? Herod is partly Jew, partly Greek. Will he honor you for silence, for a pretense that your people are nothing to you? They will laugh at you secretly, as a pusillanimous man. Shabua's pale and slender cheeks flushed. We shall avoid the subject tonight, he said. They know my opinions. You have not answered my question, said Hillel. No matter. You are an adept at sophistries and evasions, Shabua ben Abraham, and I am no match for you. My cousin, the Praetorian captain Titus Milo, Platonius suffers for Israel. Aulus Platonius, the Roman, is struck to the heart for those who are not his people. Is a Roman less or more than you, Shabua? Shabua stood up and indicated to the Nubian girl that he wished his toga. She flung it over his shoulders. He stood tall and glimmering in the lamplight. The girl knelt before him and began to arrange the toga artfully, and he became absorbed in the fall of every fold. He spoke a word or two, pettishly, to her, as if nothing was more important. He arranged the sleeve of his left arm with meticulous irritation. Saul regarded him with a fixed and peculiar expression, as if his young face had become stone. His blue eyes glittered with contempt and bitterness. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He felt above his pain the humiliation cast on his father and himself, as if they were importunate beggars, which only kindness prevented from being dismissed and driven away with whips. Shabua then turned glaucous, remote eyes on his kinsman. I do nothing. I am a realist, and I know when I can do nothing. As a civilized man, I cannot extend mercy to the merciless, tolerance to the intolerant. What else but mercilessness and intolerance have the violent extended to those they murdered? Were the Roman soldiers not doing their duty in protecting themselves, the law, and even all of Israel? Did the violent consider their people and the consequences to their people? They have brought disaster to many who are innocent, caused innocent deaths. Shall I then plead their cause? I have told you, said Hillel with renewed despair. Many of those arrested and now facing shameful deaths were not engaged in violence, as you choose to call it. They were taken from their households. They are known malcontents, said Shabua. They are potential assassins, though many come from noble houses. They have not tried to support law and order, to restrain the violent. To be tacit is to agree. There are children and maidens and youths among them, said Hillel, trying to suppress his weeping. There are wives. Shabua shrugged. It must be brought forcibly to the attention of potential inflamers that this is a warning, an act of discipline. He flushed again. Do you think me a man of marble and malevolence, who loves bloodshed and death? No. Do I rejoice in the thought of agony and grief and misery? No. But I know what must be done if Israel is to survive. You care nothing for Israel, said Hillel. All your words are but sophistries. You care for nothing but your own household, your wealth, and your position. I knew this before. I knew in my heart that I could not move you. If I had not given my word, if my dear wife had not agreed, the marriage of my daughter to your grandson would not take place, for I would not wish her allied to the house of Shabua ben Abraham, nor would I desire her to give birth to one of your blood. I have wasted my time, and time grows short. I will have recourse to worthier men, men of valor and honor and justice. He turned, and Saul accompanied him from the chambers. The youth gazed at his father and thought again how he had misjudged him, though with love. And woe came again to his heart. "Come with me," said Hillel. "We go to the house of Joseph of Arimathea." "To the man who declared he saw the star over Bethlehem?" asked Saul, with faint scorn. Hillel stopped suddenly. His face changed, became full of emotion, and a light shone behind the tears in his eyes. "To Joseph of Arimathea," he said. And we'll pause there and move on to part 2 of chapter 11.